personal belongings, your jewelry, your mink coats, your Mercedes, your Turkish rugs, all those kinds of things. And so document everything of what you have, where it is, including passwords, and what you think you want to do with it. So what you have, where it is, what you think you want to do with it, and what your questions are. That's what we've asked everyone to compile, because then when you sit down with one of these professionals, they can more quickly and effectively create your pathway to preparedness. All right, that said, today we're here to talk about burial insurance and other matters. So they say blessed assurance will get you into heaven. Burial assurance will put you in the ground. So we're going to go to Jesus about getting into heaven. We're going to talk to some other folks about getting in the ground and not being a burden to those who still will be above ground when your body goes below the ground. Amen? All right. So we're going to do this in two parts. So to introduce our presenter, we have a presenter to introduce our presenter. So let's receive our presenter for the presenter. This is John the Baptist.
Morning again, folks. I am not John the Baptist. That's high grass business there. Anyway, welcome again. This is the fourth portion of our 6 weeks seminar. And it sounds like the cart before the horse, because we talked about wills, probate, disposition of assets, and now we're talking about burial insurance. But you see, you set things in motion through the will, and we get things, so you have the will, you pass, then probate begins, you dispose of the assets. But it flows beautifully this way and makes sense. We will be talking about investment vehicles and tools next week through Dennis Williams, Jr. And the last portion on the 13th, it will be a wrap-up of what we covered from the beginning. I won't be here, but the panel members will be here and do tie everything together, and you can come with more questions, and it's my hope that we'll be able to answer all your questions by then. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to help me to welcome one of our presenters today, Debra Green Bowman. Debra is a member of this church. She's married to Dr. David Bowman. She's a mother, a member and greeter here at New Beginnings Chrisitan Fellowship. Also, she helps with homeless feeding. She's involved in health and wellness. She's a health and wellness consultant. She's a notary. She's also an event planner. She's a very busy lady, and she takes time out of her busy schedule to assist us today. And she will introduce our keynote speaker today, who is Brenda Charles. Please help me in welcoming Debra Bowman and give her a great big New Beginnings Chrisitan Fellowship applause.
Thank you very much. Most of you probably know me by face, not by name, but I'm Debra. So I have the privilege and the honor of, oh, I thought I had a big enough mouth, sorry. I have the privilege and the honor of introducing to some, and some of you may already know Brenda. She's my notary. mentor. So Brenda Charles Edwards, she's a native of Seattle, Washington. She is the owner of Black Orchid Notary. Brenda has been a notary public for 27 years. She is a 2019 National Notary Association Ambassador for Washington State. Let's give her a hand for that. She also was a 2017 Notary of the Year Special Honoree. So Brenda has a passion for helping and educating people, especially the elderly. The passion led her to create the radio show called Seniors Matter. This show provides resources and activities for older adults, their families, and caregivers. As a certified end-of-life planning facilitator, she helps people to deepen their understanding and perspectives on death and dying. The goal by the end of the workshop is to help one determine exactly what their wishes are for their care at the end of their life. Let's welcome Brenda.
Good morning, everyone. I am giving honor to God because He woke me up this morning and hopefully in my right mind. We'll see it by the end. I'd like to thank Reverend Braxton and Brother Connell for the vision of this legacy series, and Sister Debra Bowman for inviting me to share about end-of-life planning. Death is inevitable, and there are two very important things, I feel, that we must do to prepare for it. First, accept the Lord Jesus Christ as our Savior. And secondly, make our wishes known before we're not able to speak of it ourselves. I'm going to show you a film called Speaking of Dying. This film did not use actors, but real people sharing their personal experiences. I will give you an update on these people after the screening. This film is informative and yet intimate. It captures the importance of individuals and groups speaking together openly about all aspects of the dying process. Viewing Speaking of Dying will inspire and encourage you to talk to your friends, family, healthcare agents, and medical providers about your own death, planning, choices, and wishes. It will motivate you to become more informed regarding life support, palliative care, hospice, and other options long before a crisis. The film also demonstrates the value of end-of-life planning in groups, one of the best ways to become comfortable speaking openly about this subject. I know this is a hard subject because I've dealt with it with my family, and my dad, I recently, well, not more than recently, but the last time was 3 months ago, trying to get him to listen about this, and he said, I will deal with it when the time comes. Little does he realize the time has come. But anyway, that's another story. Most of all, Speaking of Dying will help you believe that your life can have a peaceful and meaningful ending that will be a gift to yourself and to your loved ones. To help others with this process, I facilitate workshops for those who want to prepare for their end-of-life paperwork. Thank you for the opportunity to share this important process, and may we start the film.
No matter how old you are, we need to be prepared. Anything can happen.
You know, I don't want to be yelling out my last wishes in my last couple of hours.
I don't want to get hauled off someplace and put in a warehouse in a bed in a hospital or in a nursing home.
You know, I'm not relishing being in pain. I don't know how much pain I'll be in. I don't know if I'll be in any.
It's hard for a lot of people to talk about it, let alone try and understand the mystery that's attached to it.
I want to be very present and aware when I'm dying. I don't want to be drugged up.
It's hard because we have to advocate for a good death in our society.
Grandma, we got an extra chair.
There is one there.
but you might have to fight me for it.
Nope, there it is, right there, right there.
The conversation is actually more important than anything. Everybody kind of needs to be part of your plan. Your care team, definitely your family members, and in fact, every family member should know your wishes to make sure that you've helped get everyone on the same page. And then even some friends should know, because you don't know what the circumstances might be for a given event. So you can fill out a form and hand it to your doctor, and they put it in your medical chart, but when you go to the emergency room, they may not be able to find that form. This is why we really emphasize talking about it.
You have the right to end your life should you choose to.
That's right.
We've all been conditioned not to talk about death. If you try to bring it up to your children or to your parents, they're quite likely to say they don't want to talk about it. Some people do fill out advance directives by themselves, or maybe in an attorney's office, but actually the best possible way is to talk about the issues in a group where you can share stories and hear different perspectives so that you become comfortable talking about it.
I have a feeling that I may have more than one occasion to even do this because people that I love are going to be dying. I have not actually been with a person while they've been dying, but this helps me think of what would be meaningful.
In families where end-of-life issues have not been talked about ahead of time, it can leave people in charge of making difficult, complex decisions without anything to go on.
I think one of the hard things, if you haven't talked about it, is that you then have to substitute your judgment for the other person's. We would have had to have, in a sense, guessed what would Dad have wanted, running the risk that we're putting our wishes on top of his. You know, but I think it was very clear what his wishes were, which were in accord with, you know, what we would have wanted for him as well.
I'm 57 years old. I'm like stage 4 metastatic lung cancer. I'm doing chemo right now, so this round I have 3 more appointments. Hopefully that'll keep working and that'll be it. But, you know, just in case it isn't, you know, I won't have plans.
I think Susan planning ahead is one of the best things a family member can do to not only care for themselves, but to care for their families. Because we can't assume we know what she wants. And it's so much more pleasant for everybody if we simply know. If we can give her the things she wants in those last few days, that's a lot. That's meaningful. It is what it is. She's living with this, so we're living with it too. It does make us appreciate her and life.
I want to go on a bingo cruise, and I'm hoping both my daughter-in-laws can go with me because a girl time. I'm hoping to go see my grandson in June. But if the chemo's working really well, I want to go to Hawaii too. I just want to live till I die.
Our society has a very strong ethic toward keeping people alive. You know, if you fall down on the street here in Seattle, no matter how old or how sick you might be, you're very likely to have CPR, and 911 would be called. You'd have a tube put down your throat, shocks might be given to your heart, IV started, and you're taken to the closest hospital with an intensive care unit. If you're out in public, the default is still to do CPR.
One of the problems with medicine is that we have so much technology now. We can always offer another carrot, another chemotherapy or another intervention or another medication. And the reason for that is that doctors generally want to fix things. We're trained to fix things. We're trained to take the heroic role. I train doctors about end of life, and many doctors are afraid to bring up the topic because they feel that they're stealing hope.
Many families become very invested in treatment, and they'll go on and on for years with treatment. Sometimes that can add to more quality of life, but if it leads to a dwindling death, where it happens so incrementally that there's no time for sharing memories or saying goodbye, then we've actually robbed people of that very meaningful experience that can happen at the time of death.
You know, if you go into an intensive care unit and you've got end-stage cancer and you're put on a respirator and we're doing all kinds of things to your body to try to keep the body alive, we're really not allowing a natural death. I think we tend to focus too much on life support and not enough on the other things we can do. And, you know, we can control your pain. We can control your suffering. We have palliative care. We have hospice. We have all these other wonderful services. So we end up sometimes prolonging dying rather than prolonging living.
And how long have the two of you been married?
A long time.
I bet.
We have been married for 68 years.
Oh my goodness, that's wonderful.
Last July.
Did you ever imagine you'd be married that long? I mean, that's a long time.
We never thought we'd live this long, did we?
That's right.
This is our oldest daughter. And this is our youngest son. The next child in line is a daughter who lives in Spain. Our kids are so scattered all over the world.
So that's
I
the
can't
important
get
thing.
them over. I can't get them together to discuss this.
This is a big issue,
That's
and it's
true.
really
It is.
important.
It is.
How will you get your children to talk about this?
Yeah.
And who will make decisions if decisions have to be made that you can't make?
I don't know.
They don't want to decide things.
You know now that you're getting old, and you know you should make some plans. Have you filled this out
Yes.
yourself? And what
Yes.
does it say?
It says I do not want to be resuscitated.
This says patient prefers no hospital transfer.
We've each got one on the refrigerator.
Well, this will reassure you. When they come, the EMTs come, they'll see this. That's why it's this bright green color. They'll see this, and they will not resuscitate you, and they will not take you to the hospital.
I was worried about how things were going to get out of control.
That's why you want to get this advance directive. It's called an advance directive. You fill it out. You can mark all these different things that you want or don't want. Now you can do this.
I have spent my whole life trying to make things easy for my kids.
Yes. And that's what you're doing now, that you're sparing them a lot of confusion, really a lot of upset. And I guarantee they'll thank you.
Will you stand behind me when I...
Absolutely.
I am living with a chronic terminal illness, diagnosed about 11 years ago. I hadn't filled out a directive. I put it off for quite some time because I just didn't know who to trust. If I became ill and I could not speak for myself, I didn't have anyone that I knew that would speak for me. And so it took me a while to find the perfect person. And it's someone I've known for 10 years. And I finally got up enough nerve to ask her. And she did not hesitate to say yes. Here is a person who has been listening to me, who has gone through so many changes through my illness, through all my different hairstyles. And she has accepted to be my power attorney and my go-to person. And I felt, such a sigh of relief, just like, okay, you know. And it was not about now I can die now. No, it was about now I can live now. Now I can live. And now I've come up with a plan. I finally got a chance to really sit down and have a serious talk with my oldest daughter. And she was more open to it instead of saying, Mom, I don't want to talk about it. I've spoken to my doctors about the person I want to speak for me. And I've talked to them about what I would like done. just in case something happens. I have to do this because not just for myself, but for those who are after me, my children, my grandchildren, my siblings, especially my siblings. I think they need this more than I do.
Palliative care is actually a relatively new field of medicine, so it's primarily an inpatient hospital service that provides care kind of in between full care and hospice care. There's this comfort care. Palliative care addresses the whole person. It addresses their suffering. It treats their symptoms. And it helps guide them through the decision making of, am I going to continue treatment? Or is it time to stop and treat my symptoms, keep me comfortable? Some insurers will pay for both palliative care and full treatment. And many people experiencing that will start to say, you know, I don't want so much treatment. I would just like to be comfortable.
Here's a picture of him. Well, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in December of 2008. So for 6 years, he's had that official diagnosis, and he's been steadily declining over that period of time. He'd lose little bits here and there. Today is Sunday, so this past Tuesday, I got a call from the adult family home that they had to call an ambulance and come and get him because he was in great distress, couldn't swallow, he was choking, may have had a stroke, they weren't sure, but it was very, very clear that he had to go to the hospital. So they took him to the ER.
Let's go a little something here.
No.
Oops, sorry.
And his speech is now slurred, so it's very difficult to understand what he's saying. He would not want to just keep going like this. He would be very upset if he knew how hard this is for us to see him like this. I love you very much.
And we decided that really the things we were doing for him, giving him antibiotics, giving him IV fluids, were really not any longer in his best interest. That this was likely his exit ramp from this world, although we didn't know that, and we still don't know that. It's still possible that he could turn around, although very unlikely. We knew that even if he did turn around, he would certainly have taken yet another large step from where he was before, which was already a significantly different person from who he had been in terms of his ability to interact with those around him and understand things, have any kind of meaningful quality of life. So our decision was to start engaging the palliative care team here, who've been wonderful, who also brought on board the hospice team.
Hi, Jen. So we don't know at this point what tomorrow will bring, but I have great confidence in hospice and palliative care. Their whole philosophy is our belief that at this point in life, comfort care is really the only thing that matters. I mean, he became incapable of doing almost everything toward the end. Oh, sweetie pie. So that's when, that was part of what the decision was, to not prolong that life, because he was no longer Jim.
Hospice care is a doctor's order for those who have 6 months or less to live. And hospice care covers comfort, just like palliative care does. It treats the illnesses that are not the actual terminal illness. So hospice covers things like hospital beds, chaplaincy care, social work care. It is not 24-hour nursing care, but there's nurse visit care.
A big piece of the hospice work is to help people accept the inevitable, accept their prognosis. When people can accept
the end of their life, accept that they are dying. Their passing is much easier, much calmer. They seem to have less pain, less anxiety. A lot of studies have been done. They actually show that people on hospice do live a little longer than people not on hospice, with far less suffering.
And the reason is they're comfortable, they're cared for, they're home, they're with their loved ones. And then the other thing we know about hospice is that the loved ones have a shorter grief period or bereavement period because they have time. They have time to say goodbye and do the important tasks of dying.
When I first learned that I had ovarian cancer, my doctor was very encouraging that I would be one of the survivors as things progressed, and it became clear I was not going to be. I chose hospice to enhance my care.
And I've been working with Marianne for about 7 months now. I've been her nurse.
You have been my nurse. Yes, and probably more than my nurse, a friend as well. I consider Sandra my nurse friend. I didn't realize how well they track me until I started to go downhill really fast. I didn't have to go to the emergency room and wait. I didn't have to call my doctor and make an appointment down the road. I was the recipient of immediate care. It was wonderful. You can be in your house and have somebody here taking care of you that doesn't necessarily have to be your husband or your kids. I think also knowing that they have my back gave me at that time and still gives me the confidence to move on. Hospice has made a huge difference in our lives. They are my support people. They're my people.
We're very fortunate in the state of Washington to have a new law, the Death with Dignity law, that makes it possible for people who have been diagnosed with 6 months or less to live to go to a doctor, get a prescription, see a second doctor, have the prescription filled and have it on hand. Then if their suffering becomes unbearable, they can just go to sleep, have their family around them, and die a peaceful and meaningful death.
Yeah, so my illness is multiple system atrophy, and we found out about it about 2 years ago, I guess. It took a while to diagnose. I had lots of tests, lots of specialists, and then finally the neurologist figured it out. And it's a related illness to Parkinson's, but it develops a lot faster. With this disease, what happens is your muscles completely shut down, and so if you can't move, I'm not sure what kind of a life that is. I mean, if I can't stand up and get out of bed, or talk, or it's just pointless. And so I would like to go before that happens. And I'm not totally committed to the death with dignity because I just can't predict how I'm going to feel exactly when the time comes, or how I'm going to know when the time comes. Am I going to have the emotional wherewithal to actually do it? But I want to have that option.
And I guess I've been sort of waiting for Dad to take the lead on this because it's such a personal decision, but I would 100% support whatever it is that you decide to do, and I wouldn't feel abandoned or left behind.
I have been in full support of Bob considering this option ever since day one, and to have him becoming totally incapacitated and not being able to move, I just couldn't envision him going through that process. But also, it is his decision.
Yeah, I think about it almost every day. You know, trying to sort of come to terms with how am I going to make this decision, and I still don't know how. But I have a sense that there will come a moment when it'll be obvious that now's the time.
My husband's name was Alan Alberts. Alan was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease toward the end of 2011. He voluntarily stopped eating and drinking while he was still mentally competent and in the middle stages of Alzheimer's, so he didn't have to live into the suffering and indignities that comes with the late stages of Alzheimer's. His mother suffered from this disease more than 10 years, and we saw what happened to her. And Alzheimer's is the fastest growing disease, and there is no cure in sight right now. I did quite a bit of research about this first and really educated myself on all the legal ways to die. And I read the information, shared all the information with Alan. So we had a doctor who was on call and saw Alan actually 3 times during the 9.5 days that it took him to pass. And we had 24-hour caregivers. I believe Alan had a very, very peaceful, organic death. I was with him when he died. I really helped midwife him home. For Alan, this was about self-love and peace and compassion for himself and for those that he loved the most. He didn't suffer. He had a good death.
Dying can be a beautiful process if people have done what I call the real work of dying. Sharing your memories, talking about what your life meant, forgiving people and asking for forgiveness. The real work of dying is wrapping up your life and saying goodbye to it and doing that in a conscious way.
And then I realized it's living. It's not about being alive, it's the living. I don't know who I am or who you are or any of you are or where I'm at, and I'm not living. Then I want to die. I want to go to that next mystery.
For me, the hardest thing has been watching Dad suffer. I always leave just wondering at how he wakes up every morning with such bravery and courage. And it's really because of Anne's love that Dad's able to have this experience.
We've been equipped our whole lives from the way we were raised with our mom and our dad to talk about things, to talk about the hard things, and that's how you figure out how to deal with them.
He always used to tell us, if you have a decision to make, it's usually the hardest choice that's the correct choice.
But these kind of things is wonderful to hear from my 2 daughters. It really is. I appreciate you girls so much.
We love you, Dad.
And I love you. I do. Yeah. We had about 100 people showed up for this birthday party at the Mountaineers Club. And Ann did a spectacular job of the decorations and the program. We had all my favorite music. All my friends were there. And that all came out of the class because we planned our memorial service. So Ann decided just to do it while I was still here. It was just fantastic.
Dad has amazing people in his life. Anne, number one, my sister, and the people that he's made friends with throughout the years. He's managed somehow to make some very close friends with wonderful people. So knowing that he's surrounded by all these wonderful people that love him has helped me.
And love is the greatest gift.
My father was a great teacher in his dying. He had a heart attack, and he was in my arms sitting at the kitchen table. And my father says, you know, I'm going to be with Jesus. I'm like, no, you can't. And I said, call the paramedics. But my father was ready, but I wasn't ready. No one had told me what he wanted. But a year later, he was in the hospital again, and he said, I want to go home. And he said, I don't want any more surgery. He says, I'm ready to go. And so we respected that. And he died at home, in his bed, with my mother's arms around him as he passed to the next life. And he went beautifully, my mother said, beautifully. He had fought the good fight. And that's what I say every day to myself. I say, I've fought the good fight. You know, I have done everything that I can to live my life victoriously. I'll always be a part of nature. I'll always be a part of, you know, this magnificent universe. Gone is his body, but hey, I'm still here.
Death is a natural part of life. Everything and everyone is going to die. It's a privilege to be able to envision and plan for a good death for ourselves. Learning about the resources, hospice, palliative care, voluntary stopping eating and drinking, the Death with Dignity law, and talking about them is a gift to ourselves and a gift to our loved ones. Accepting one's death actually makes life better and creates a legacy that will live on after we're gone.
I've seen this film a number of times, and every time I see it, it makes me well up inside. But it's true. This is something we all have in common. This is something that's going to affect us all. I just want to give you a little rundown on the people that were in the film. Pat Benson, the last one, I had the privilege of meeting her about the middle of last year. She attended one of my workshops. She had been to one before, unless she said she had someone to be her spokesperson. But when she came to my workshop, she told me that this person told her she couldn't do it anymore. There was a lot of reasons, but that just goes to show that you need to have more than one person as your designee to speak for you. And so now she's going through that, trying to figure out who she wants. But I thought it was a sort of a wake-up call, because when we go through the 5 wishes, which is an advance directive, we tell people, you know, please choose more than one. Actually, you should choose 3 if you can. But Pat's still kicking. So Bill and Audrey, as of 2018, celebrated their 72nd wedding anniversary, and they recently moved into assisted living. Susan McGregor went on her bingo cruise. She attended the Speaking of Dying anniversary celebration in April of last year. And Pat Benson was also, that's where I first met Pat, was at the anniversary celebration last year. And then Dr. Jim Owens died on November 1st, 2014. In the film, when his wife kisses him goodbye, that was the last time that she saw him, as he died the next day. His special dog was adopted by the filmmaker, Speaking of Dying. Mary Ann died from her ovarian cancer on Christmas Eve 2014, shortly after being filmed for this movie. Robert Bob Fuller, after becoming unable to walk from progression of his neurological degenerative disease, chose the death of dignity law, and he took the medications to end his suffering. He died peacefully on January 16, 2015. His wife, Ann, speaks at Speaking of Dying film screenings when she's available, and she also attended the 2018 anniversary celebration of the film. Alan Alberts used voluntary stopping and eating, drinking prior to making of this film. He died after 8 days on April 19, 2013, while being cared for in his home. His wife, Phyllis, has become a prominent spokesperson for voluntary stopping eating and drinking. She recorded a TED Talk, published a book, and organized the first national conference on voluntary stopping eating and drinking. And it was held in Seattle in October 2016. Nearly 5 years after the filming of Speaking and Dying, all of the information remains current, with the same issues and decisions being pertinent for planning one's end of life. The film has been shown over 100 times, and certified heart work facilitators have led over 60 workshops to assist people in completing their end-of-life choices and plans. So, this is such necessary work. All the seminars that you've been to have told you, these are things we have to do. We can't be in denial. Our time is going to come, but while we're still healthy and in our right minds, we can make it easier for ourselves and for our loved ones. And I'm sure many of you have experienced a loved one dying, and they didn't have a will. They didn't say what they wanted. If they wanted CPR, palliative care, anything. And you're left to try to figure out what it is they want. And it's very hard. So you can help your loved ones and yourself by making this decision while you can still talk. Are there any questions? I know there's got to be at least one. How many of you have already put together your advance directive and have picked someone to speak for you when you cannot speak for yourself? Oh, that's great. That's more than I usually see. It's really important. I think about the shooting that happened a couple days ago in Lake City, and 2 people died. And I know one gentleman was 70. I don't remember what the other person was. But it doesn't really matter the age. As I said before, to me, the 2 important things that you need to think about before this happens is, have you accepted Christ as your Savior? And you've just got to tell somebody, because people don't know what's in your head. You've got to speak your truth. Yes?
Is your directive 100% binding? Do doctors have to worry about being sued by that person?
No.
Okay.
No, they don't. They don't. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'm sorry. No, the doctors do not have to worry about being sued. It's called 5 Wishes. I'm sure. Do you know about it? Okay. So am I correct on that? Right. It's probably one of the simplest ones to fill out. But, you just have to know what it is you want. Do you want life support? I mean, a lot of people, I'll give my dad as an example. In late September, my brother took him to the hospital, and because his blood pressure was high. Well, when we got to emergency, his blood pressure was 236. And when I came into in the emergency room where he was in, the emergency doctor came in and he asked my dad, "Do you want CPR?" So my husband was there, my brother, his girlfriend, and myself. My dad looked at my brother. My brother is a police officer as well as a realtor and an attorney. He looked at my brother. My brother didn't say anything. In fact, he just kind of looked away. I wanted to smack him at that point. And then Dad looked at me and he said, "Explain." So I took a deep breath and I said, "Remember when we used to sit and watch ER on TV?" He goes, "Yes." I said, "Remember how people would come in, their hearts had stopped, they would pump on their chests or use the paddles?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "That's CPR. Do you want that?" He looked at me, and I could tell he was thinking. Still, I don't think quite sure processing, but had a better idea. And he said, "Yes." Now, the only problem with that is my dad's 96 years old. He's gotten a lot frailer than he even was 6 months ago. Statistics show that if you are older and frail and you have CPR, your ribs most likely are going to get broken, and you can puncture a lung, and just different things can happen. And if you have to If you survive CPR and then you go onto a ventilator, your chances of coming back as the person you were when you went in are less than 3%. So I couldn't tell him that at that time. But it's his choice, just like it's all of our choices. So I just encourage you to think about it, decide what you want, tell somebody, your friends, and get yourself an advanced care directive. I don't care where you get it, just get one to protect your family and make things easier for yourself. Gary?
First of all, I want to just say hi, Brenda. How you doing? It's a pleasure seeing you again.
You too.
Tell Pastor Paul I said hi.
I will.
I have just a quick question, Brenda.
Sure.
Regarding the advance directive and the will.
Yes.
Can the advance directive be included in the will, or are they separate items?
Well, this is a health care directive, so it would be separate from your will. But I imagine your attorney, if you can incorporate it all into one document, but usually you have it separate. But it's not impossible to do it, right, sir?
Thank you, Brenda.
You're welcome. Hi, Marcella.
Just so we're clear, they're separate documents, and the physician's directive is also known as your living will. The last will and testament, it kicks in upon death. So don't confuse the two. You don't want to put them together. They're two separate documents. You have the last will and testament, you have the living will or the physician's directive, and you also have the durable power of attorney. They're separate documents, and they have different requirements. The physician's directive that we've been talking about this morning, the living will, you keep that with your physician, the hospital, and this is, you want to put your healthcare providers on notice with the physician's directive. Finally, with respect to the legal challenges, the courts will bend over backwards to find that the living will is legitimate. It must be notarized and witnessed. As long as you're not doing it under duress, and you have to have competent evidence to show that somebody had a gun to your head and caused you to sign this document. In the absence of that, the court will honor it. With respect to liability to the doctors, it's nearly impossible to do that. If the doctor or the healthcare provider rely on that document in good faith and they were reasonable in their acceptance of it, the court will allow it. The only issue, or where I see you might have a challenge, is when it comes to religion. You may have some sort of maybe Jehovah's Witnesses. That might be you might have a different approach to it. But those are all different kinds of things. Once the person makes the decision that this is what they want, the court or anybody is not going to interrupt it.
And I would just like to add that once you make that decision, that you not only give it to the people that he has suggested, but your close friends and family, because if something happens, they need to be able to get to it. And you never know who's going to be around when something might happen to you. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I would just say that it's really important to talk to your family if you're going to be about your decisions and not just write them down. My mother died at 98, and she was doing well up until about 5 years before and had a stroke. And then we had to make some decisions, and there's 6 kids in the family. And it would have been very hard on my brother if we had something, because she couldn't speak. She had a stroke and couldn't speak and write. The youngest brother at a certain point when we could have made a decision to let her go, he was not ready. And that's why I'm saying that it's very important to talk with the family, because if they stuck to that if she had a directive and they had stuck to that directive and let her go at that point, it would have been devastating for my younger brother. But as it turned out, we did some intervention, and then she passed a couple years later, and he was able to let her go at that point. But had there been a directive that's 2 or 3 years before then, when we did make a decision to keep her alive, he was not ready. And I think that's very important.
Brother Connell, I'm not an attorney, but my understanding is in the state of Washington that if a person doesn't have a will or advance directive, and if it comes down to making a life-ending decision, that all family members have to be in agreement. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a tough question. But if there's a surviving spouse, that person would make, if there's no will or physician's directive, there's no decision to be made. The person stays alive.
Okay.
So the document then becomes important. So the eldest son or daughter doesn't make the decision to whack the old guy. Because you have to look at things like, is there an economic benefit to them?
Right, definitely.
So it's not really an objective decision that the person would be making. So no, you don't have a right to do that.
Thank you.
Should
Yes,
I just
ma'am.
stay here?
I have a seat right over there. Sure. Yes.
I noticed in the film that one of the ladies had a little green form that she talked about. She put it on the refrigerator for the
Right. That's
ERT.
the
Do you
pulse.
guys- yeah.
I can't remember the full term. Pulmonary. What is it? Physician's order. What was it?
Well, it's the same as a physician's directive, but it's an order not to resuscitate.
Right, and it's bright green, and you write on there whether or not you want to be, if you want CPR or not, and usually it's displayed somewhere prominently in your home. If this happens in your home, you can also get wallet-sized cards too.
Where will we get that from? Our attorney?
Let's see, where did I get mine? When I give them my workshops. The doctors don't have the small ones; they have the big ones. So that's an easy way to get it. But you really should have that. And I know a number of assisted and independent living facilities, they do have them. And the person at the front desk, if someone has an emergency and the fire department comes in, they can tell the fire department where it is, because they encourage everyone to put it on the inside door of their cabinet in the kitchen. Rashay, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Ray, so do we do the living will basically and the will with you, or do we do those separately with the doctor and then the will with you, or what do we do?
So to avoid any conflicts of interest, I can do the living will, also known as physician's directive, the last will and testament, and the durable power of attorney. As I said a couple weeks ago, I would urge people to do them at the same time because it's more cost effective to do that. However, it's a standard requirement for doctors to ask you every time you go in, do you have a living will? Mm-hmm. And if you say no, they'll ask you if you would like to do one, so that the doctor's office, but it's specific. If it's circulated to all your healthcare providers, it would be good. But if you go into polyclinic and they ask you, it would only be at the polyclinic. So if you want Swedish and other people to have it, then you need to make copies and provide to them. I think eventually the state may get around to having a central location where these kinds of things will be on file, but right now we don't do that. So it's your duty to provide your healthcare providers with this. It's even more immediate.
Hi. I wondered what you just said about circulate them around to the hospitals. What if my wishes are, if I'm in a car accident, I want to go to Harborview, but I don't have any records at Harborview. My records are at Swedish. How would that happen?
Yeah, first off, they're
You
going
have
to take you
any-
to the nearest hospital if you're life-threatening injuries.
That's my concern also.
Well, for trauma, though, Harborview is number one.
That's where I want to go.
So, I mean, you know, I know we've had some little stories in past years and jokes about Harborview, but seriously, it is the best for trauma.
The only reason I was saying that because Harborview would not have a record of my wishes.
Oh.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And the last thing I wanted to know, I went to a workshop some years ago, and I had one of the books, The 5 Wishes.
Yes.
And of course, I was younger then, so I just kind of. But do you know where you get those books from?
You can order it online. It looks like she's saying Amazon.
No, you can get it on the internet.
Oh, I know. I provide them at my workshop, and I ordered them directly from the company. So, yes, ma'am.
I'm going to come to you.
Thank you. Yeah. I was going to ask, as far as death with dignity, how you would go about with that process if you just decided not to take medicine.
First off, you have to have 2 doctors say that you have less than 6 months to live. And there's a time period between each doctor. And right now I don't remember. And then even with that, you have to have, they'll give you a prescription, but then you have to have a certain pharmacist that will fill that prescription, because all pharmacists will not do that. The way you find that out is through End of Life Washington. They have that information. It's supposed to be, it is confidential, but they are the only ones that can give that to you. And then you have, and it's my understanding with speaking to the executive director of End of Life Washington, that most people do not fill the prescription because you need to wait when you're closer to the time that you've made the decision to do this, because the prescription is expensive. So there's always a little catch. But anyway, you have to first start with 2 doctors saying that you have less than 6 months to live.
Can I add something to that? I was
Sure.
a chaplain at Seattle Cancer Care Alliance.
Oh, great.
You also
Right.
have to be able to administer the drug yourself.
Right, and that's the last piece of it. You have to be able to do it yourself. They'll mix it for you, but you have to be able to take it yourself. They will not administer it to you.
And
Thank you.
research shows that it tends to be older white men who use that, because people often talk about it as like control, having some sense of control over your
Sure.
life. So most people do not use it. It's mostly older white guys, interestingly.
But there again, you have control. Just like you have control now to make decisions and let it be known what you want or don't want. And that's the key. You're in control. You are still speaking, walking, hearing. You're in control. Yes, sir. Oh, Reverend, how you doing?
How you doing?
Good, thanks.
we've been talking about Washington State. What happens if you're traveling in another state or in another country? Do you need a copy of the document, and will they honor it?
I would definitely have a copy, and would also get that little card if you can, as far as saying whether or not you want to be resuscitated or not. I can't say whether or not they'll honor it. I don't know. But I think, I'm not sure, maybe you can answer that. Is the green card universal? I'm not sure on that either, but I would take it with you, and I would take a copy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Clarence, that's not nice. Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I have no idea. It's made up by a pharmacist. I don't know. It's not something you can get over the counter. It has to be a special pharmacist. I believe it's a liquid that they mix together, but I don't know. Don't quote me, because I don't know for sure. But whatever it is, the person that has requested it has to be the one that gives it to themselves. No one else can give it to them. Yes, sir.
Do you feel that Madigan is being treated differently since it's on post than being out in the private hospitals?
What do you mean differently?
Are the laws still binding on military bases? Because I know they have different rules.
As far as
resuscitation,
I have no idea. I would, well, number one, if you have that card,
right,
you're telling them what you want. And I don't know really how the military works.
Yeah.
I would think that this would be a universal thing, that they would honor what you want. I mean, it is your life, and I realize they can run your life when you're in the military. But I would think in this, but I don't know for sure. Do you know?
It's an interesting question. I never thought of it before, because you have federal and state jurisdiction. Just like how the federal government will try to regulate abortion or birth control pills, I'm sure there may be some differences, federal differences, but it's a very interesting question. I'll research it and get back to you. It's an interesting, very interesting question. I like it.
Yes, it is. Thank you for that.
One other note, just through an experience just recently, I've gone through for people who are in military. If your parents have to go to Madigan, if you don't have your documents in order to be able to get onto the base, you might want to get yourself.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get to that hospital, and it's going to take you a lot.
So then, those people that need to get on the base need to have their documents filed with whoever at the base, right?
Correct. So,
okay.
I mean,
another reason, and once again, make sure more than one person knows what you want and has a copy of what your wishes are. Anyone else?
I was a little bit late, so I apologize. So you may have talked about this, but I just want to kind of stress the importance of having your living will done, because I have been in hospital rooms with children who are fighting, and it just tears you apart to have to, it's basically you're leaving your children or you're leaving your family members to make decision for you, and it just makes it so terrible. It's already a difficult time. People are, watching their parents and loved ones get sick and wither away and die, and then there's no decision made, and so they have to make the decision, and then it breaks families up. I mean, it literally causes so much trauma and emotional damage that can really be rectified if you, I mean, it's not going to be totally rectified
Right,
because there
because-
might be some disagreement, but at least you can say, but this is what Mama wanted, or this is what Daddy wanted. And so I just really strongly, I'm saying this, we don't even have it. So, Michael and I know I need to get it done because just of what I've seen and the pain that it causes. So get it done, please.
And I'd just like to throw in a quick story. I think I have time. From a notary perspective, I was called to a nursing home, and the children were there, and their mother was, she was dying. But they wanted her to change her will, and they wanted me to notarize her doing that. And so when I go to see someone, especially when they're in a hospital, I ask them a number of questions. It's, just general, how you doing? What is today? Do you know why I'm here? Just little things like that to see what their response is. And her response wasn't very good. So I told the family that I could not in good conscience notarize their document. Needless to say, that didn't go over well. I was called a few names other than the child of God. But anyway, I didn't do it. And then I told the director of the facility what had happened and let them deal with it. But that's why it's so important to have this done so you don't put your kids in that position. I don't know the dynamics with that family, but I just know that I had a gut feeling that things weren't right anyway. And then after talking with her and seeing where she was, I just said, I can't do it because it can come back on me. And so I value my career. I've been doing this for 27 years. I love what I do, and I don't need to go out that way. Are there any other questions?
In your seminars, do you cover any type of funeral arrangements or any kind of prepaid funeral things?
I don't cover that. We do talk about green burial, cremation, regular burial, and there is a bill out right now that, if it passes, will make Washington State the first state to have a water, I don't know all the details on it, but it's a water-based cremation, which is supposed to be a lot better for our economy than what we have right now. But it's still in the House. It's passed one stage and it's gone into the next. Yes, Clarence.
And just one last comment, Brenda. As the funeral coordinator here at the church, I have a pamphlet that's been very helpful for a lot of families, and it asks you all the questions that you need to have answers to at the end of life, and it makes planning a lot easier. So it's good to just fill it out, put it away, so someone can get it. It goes from
No, don't put it away. Share it.
Well, yes. Put it in a safe place. And it asks all of the key and important questions, so you can see me and I can get copies of that for you.
Thank you.
Brenda, I want to make a clarification here. And I picked up on it when Reverend Carr talked about the conflict. That arises with a durable power of attorney. Okay, follow me in this. You grant, take for example, in my mother-in-law's situation, we did a durable power of attorney, and brother-in-law had the right to make medical decisions. Durable power of attorney. Follow me in this. If she had a physician's directive, not a durable, she can have both. If she had the physician's directive, the living will, it don't matter none what my brother-in-law's or sister-in-law or my wife thinks. It's an objective decision that the doctors make and say, this person sure enough going to die in 6 months. They're terminal. They don't want to be put on life to be resuscitated. Boom. That's it. It's an objective decision. I don't mean to make it sound so crass, but you have the durable power of attorney, which is where the conflict comes up, where this guy doesn't think that you should do that. Don't pull the plug on grandma now, even though grandma can't speak. But the evidence shows that, yeah, it's time. The durable power of attorney over here is fighting with the physician's directive over here, and the physician's directive will take precedent. Okay? So we're clear on that. And with the physician's directive, it's not, if you wake up one morning, you're really depressed, and you say, oh God, I really don't feel like getting out of bed today, I feel like dying. That doesn't qualify you for pulling the plug. It has to be objective medical. I can still make you laugh without talking about crackheads. But it's an objective decision. It's objective medical decision that's made. It's not something arbitrary and capricious where, oh God, I don't feel like doing anything today. And you go to the doctor, you take your medicine, and boom, you're dead.
Thank you for that. It's been a pleasure being here with you. Thank you, and pleasantly enjoy the rest of your seminar, because this is such an important thing that you guys are doing, and I will tell other people that I know about it too. And thank you again. Thank you, Reverend.
And I don't know if you want to mention that you have a sign-up sheet out on the table. Okay.
There's a sign-up sheet on the table for getting the newsletter, which comes out quarterly, and also there is a workshop if you're interested. Yes. Thank you.
Let's give our presenters another great big hand. When my grandmother, the late Neela Patterson, was dying in St. Joseph Hospital, she suffered a brain aneurysm after going to a women's choir rehearsal, and she was 70 years of age. We thought she had infinite life in front of her, still doing her thing, and she had an aneurysm, fell in the tub. They got her to the hospital. It was clear she wasn't going to make it. And one of my uncles, who was always known to be the materialistic one, while the others were around the bed grieving and trying to get my Aunt Doretha in here from Alaska, he had some bootleg attorney draw up some papers and took a pen and wrapped my grandmother's hand around it to sign everything over to him. And the war was on. I was in Buffalo, New York at the time, and the phone calls came in, and then the grandkids got involved in it with respect to whose mama was who, and this thing, the sin of the fathers, went to the third and the fourth generation. So having this stuff, so as Ray said, nobody can come in, ain't got no boom, done. This stuff is so important because it can stop that kind of coonery and buffoonery and chicanery from going on, because people will do it. And so we thank God for all of our presenters who have helped us. You cannot take it with you. There is a story of a real gnarly old selfish gentleman, lived selfish all his life. And his last deathbed wish, he told his wife, he says, when I go, I don't want to leave nothing for nobody. I want to take it all with me. I want it to go in the ground with me. He was a very wealthy man. He wanted to leave nothing to nobody. And so at the funeral, they had a nice funeral and everything, and they asked his wife afterward, they said, well, what about his last request? Take it all with him. She said, I accommodated his request. They said, how so? She said, I wrote him a check. So, good luck cashing it. So you gotta leave it to somebody. So again, your homework remains the same. Write down what you have. Financial assets, bank accounts, CDs, money market accounts, 401ks, Roth IRAs, insurance policies, and where they're at, including passwords. What do you have? Property, real property, here and elsewhere. And personal possessions, all those long floor-length mink coats, all that $100,000 jewelry, those emeralds and diamonds, your 2 chains, your Mercedes, your Porsche, your Jaguar, all that. Who's going to get them? Your golden golf clubs, all that kind of stuff, your Heisman Trophy. And what you think you want to do with it. And then what your questions are. And these people can more readily develop a pathway for you. So we want to be about this business. I was watching it in my office while I was doing some other things, and I was inspired by the one quote. Death can be a beautiful process. It is wrapping things up and saying goodbye to this life. Wrapping life up and saying goodbye. Think of all the things we do on a daily basis. We put our energy into it, but before we're done, we have to wrap up. My kids grew up on Barney, and at the end of every episode of Barney, they would sing that song, clean up, everybody, everywhere, clean up, everybody do your share. So the kids, before they learn that while you finish it, you got to clean up, you got to wrap up. And so if kids learn on the front end of life, whatever you're doing before you're finished, clean up, wrap it up. Here we're just saying that with the whole course of our life, why would we spend all these years touching all these lives, pouring our lives out, and then not make certain that as we near the exit, we clean up, wrap everything up, have all the conversations we need to have, set things in order emotionally, financially, circumstantially, and basically say goodbye to the life that you've been living, so that your death is a temporary emotional crisis for those who loved you, but not a long-term legal and financial and circumstantial crisis. I'm hearing from, I'm not going to say where because the world's a smaller place, and then we want to admit within the African American community, say no matter where we live in this country, you about 2 people removed from knowing anybody. There's a major church in this country where the pastor died. He'd been there about 30 years, over 6,000 members, had no succession plan and no personal will, and both the family and the church are in court. All those years working, and now it's going to be destroyed. Going to be destroyed. So sad. The board of directors, one of our main objectives for this year, we started last year. I prompted the conversation about pastoral succession plan. What happens when Reverend Braxton retires? What happens if Reverend Braxton gets hit by a bus? You know, what happens if I get some illness to die in my youth? It could happen. People die every day. That there should be an established, known process that has been worked out, that the church itself has embraced, so now all you do is the plan kicks in. And there's no fighting. We don't want to be one of those churches that are in the newspaper for the sake of the infighting. Because try coming behind that and offering people your faith when they've seen Christians act like they know anybody but God. And have their churches around here in the newspaper all the time. Not for advance of the gospel, for how they're going after one another. So this is serious work. We need to be about it. Sheila and I would not leave Sam and Carissa to fight over stuff. Sam wouldn't have a chance. He'd be defenseless against his sister. And so next week, Dr. Cannell? Hold on, we want to get this, we're recording this. And by the way, I was wondering how Ray was going to get a crackhead comment in today. He finally did at the end. We've all been looking for that. Some have referred this as the crack seminars.
No, we've talked about the infighting of the family and trying to avoid that, but I know of several instances where people went to nursing homes or had a caregiver, and the wills got changed under those situations. So I'm just saying it's very, very important that you make sure, I don't know all the legal words we're talking about here, trying to learn just like you are, but make sure that everything's in place and power of attorney or whatever, just so you don't have your loved one in somebody taking care of them, or have them in a nursing home and then the nurse assistant ends up with the house or something else. Now, this has happened. I've seen it happen several times. So.
Let me comment on that a little bit. The legislature in Washington, they've changed those requirements specifically because of the abuses that used to occur occurs in the nursing homes. So that's why now, back in the olden days, you didn't need to notarize a power of attorney, durable power of attorney. Now you do. And the witness cannot be a caregiver or somebody related to the facility. So for those specific reasons, our legislature changed that law, so the requirements are different. It could still happen.
Wow. Thanks. Money, the root of all evil. Next week, we'll be talking about investment vehicles for establishing a financial legacy. So on the whole subject of Can't Take It With You, how the fruits of our life's labors become seeds that continue to produce fruit in perpetuity when we are gone, in the lives of our loved ones that we leave behind, the institutions that have mattered to us, including our church and educational institutions and United Negro College Fund or whatever else. And so our presenter is going to be the illustrious Mr. Dennis Williams, Jr. Stand on up, Dennis. Y'all don't like him? That's the best you can do? So he's presented here before. Those of you taking any of our financial literacy classes, he's presented on several occasions. So he's going to be talking to us about things that you can do now, vehicles that you can set in motion now that upon your demise will release funds in strategic ways that continue to fund and feed the things that matter to you.